Hello, friends, and welcome to the Living Lost podcast, where we unpack the quiet, complex griefs that often go unacknowledged.
I'm Diana Bernard.
And I'm Cassandra Harris Towner.
As licensed mental health counselors, we're here to shine a light on the losses that don't come with a funeral.
From psychoeducation to pop culture breakdowns, we're showing you what this grief looks like in action because you can't heal what you don't acknowledge.
Our mission is to help you name your loss so you can start creating a meaningful path forward. Before we dive in, we want to grow this community with you. If you find value in this conversation, please hit subscribe. It helps us reach the people who need to hear that their grief is valid. Hey!
So welcome!
We're here.
Yeah, buddy!
We are here. Cassandra, nobody knows us, basically, so I wanted to start today with just introducing ourselves.
Well, my first thing I want to let you know is my mom says I'm cool. I'm just saying. So even though you don't know me, she says I'm great. So thanks for being here for that part. Well, the fun fact that both of us share is that we're both transplants from New York into central Gulf side of Florida. I'm in Central Florida. You're in the Gulf side. And don't worry, we don't judge for that. But so just having that sort of transitional cultural dichotomy has just been kind of crazy for me. I don't know what it's been like for you, but it was a pretty rough transition initially.
Oh, yeah. And you saw mine live in action.
Oh, yes, I did.
Yeah, actually, so let me let you know that we met when we started this online program. And it was right before the world turned upside down.
We started school, May 2020?
And let me rewind to remember. I know that in March 2020 was the week that the world shut down was when I interviewed for this program.
You're much more on time for things than I am. I'm pretty sure mine was a little bit closer to May.
Mm-hmm. And I was actually going to start in August. I would have never met you if I would have started in August.
That's actually a crazy thought.
Mm-hmm. And she told me, well, why not start? Why are you starting on August? Why not start in May? And that was after the interview, after we had been like 2 weeks in. And I was like, you know what? It's online. Let me start anyway, because who in the world knows what's going to happen?
Yep, might as well.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that I wanted, this is a second career for me. This is also a second career for you. Right? So I wanted to have a different experience, completely different. And as you will notice, I love people and love meeting people. I'm very extroverted. And I made it my business that during our first class, do you remember it was like I don't know how many little squares, like 100. And I just listened, everybody got to introduce themselves. And I listened for the people who I felt had a cool vibe and I wanted to be friends with. So I messaged Cassandra and maybe 3 other people that I felt we would connect really well. And we all became friends. And Cassandra, being in Florida at the time, when I started the program, I lived in New York. I did not live in Florida. So
I'm not saying she moved here for me. I'm just saying that's a pretty heavy coincidence.
Wow. Didn't make it harder for me to decide. That's so true. But you definitely held my hand through that transition. I didn't even know what transplant meant in the sense of moving. I never thought in my life I would leave New York.
Oh, that's cool. Well, the fun thing also is that we're both moms of 3. The difference is like I've got the 3 girls, you've got 2 girls and a boy. However, like I watched you move with them too. Like that was a crazy experience. I was like, you're doing what now? You're doing it all in like 24. Okay, let's see how this goes. And you like powered through that. It was amazing.
Yeah, and hearing you say that just brings me back to why we're so close and why we bonded, because not only was the world shut down, I was also there. You were there for me for my transition to Florida, and I was there for your pregnancy. Because, like you're going to see that we just keep making things much more difficult for ourselves.
Not saying we're a mess.
We started school during a pandemic. Cassandra decided to have a 3rd baby. I decided to move to Florida, and we both, thank God, and this is when 2 people are meant to be, is that we supported each other. Only one of us fell at a time. When you fell, I picked you up. and vice versa. And if it wasn't for you, honestly, I've told you this so many times, but I wouldn't have made it. Becoming a mental health counselor is wonderful. You have to love it, but it is a hard journey. The past 5 years,
Oh
it's a
yeah.
different life. We're living a completely different life.
And not even just the addition of the small person to my world, because I did that fun thing where, like, my oldest was 10, and I was like, "Let's do this again, why not?" And so now there's, like, a 10-year age difference between my oldest and my youngest. Even just talking about, like, the living loss grief of that, like, the complete change in the family, the create like, it's a whole new entity, and so having to, like, let go of the old one, but start with the new one, but understanding that it's all great at the same time, that was such a huge transition, and you were there for all of it. You were the one you and another friend of ours were like, "Listen, it's gonna be a whole new situation, but it's gonna be better than what you could ever imagine," and you were right, like,
Mhm.
100% correct, and
Mhm.
I definitely, like, lost my mind more than once during that whole thing. Somehow we both
That's
graduated on time,
good.
though.
I That to me is the biggest miracle that we did. I wanted to quit so many times. I was just like, "I need a break. I need a break." At the end of each class, which was 7 weeks straight and 1 week off, and then 7 weeks straight for 3 years, I'm like, "My brain is fried. How are we gonna do this?" And then we would hear the next class, we'd be like, "Oh, that sounds really good," and then we would start right over. I'm like, yeah.
I was
Yeah,
only a little bit salty about the fact that we had to take that extra class at the end, just a
oh,
little
yeah.
salty about
Well,
that, but it worked out great.
yeah, that's yeah. We had to take a whole 'nother class in Florida that because our school was in New York. So one thing that you mentioned, one of the things that you mentioned is that age gap and that very specific transition, right?
Mhm.
And when we are going to be having these conversations, we're going to just bring in and say and name it. Name what grief is that? And that we're gonna talk a little bit about it more today, but that's ambiguous loss. You're losing that family, right? And when you have a child and they're 1 or 2 years apart, the same thing happens, but the
Yep.
impact feels bigger when you had 10 years from the oldest to the youngest, and mine is 7 years. And I was telling you recently, not till this year, when now they're in middle school and I still have a first grader, did I feel the difference.
Mhm.
But this is how the podcast is gonna run. We're not going to just tell you the definitions of these things. We're not gonna be here teaching, but we're going to name them as we tell stories about ourselves, about our lives, our guests. I One of the things that I was sharing with Cassandra that about myself is that I love, like, drama, television shows, TV shows, and I love character-driven stories. So and being a therapist, I try to shut it off when I watch a movie or show, but it's kinda hard. I really love how when I see that they acknowledge non-death grief.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because that is one place that we differ. Like, you love
Mm.
drama, you love stuff that sucks you in, you love the things. I love, like, things that make my brain happy, and I don't have to think about anything because we spend so much time all day, every day thinking about things. Like, when we
Me
went to
too.
watch that musical together, you and another person that we went with were talking about how, like, you were dissecting each character and you were doing all the things, and meanwhile, I have, like, the circus tune going on in my head, and I'm like, "Doot, doot, 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 doot." This is so entertaining. Because I can't do that, so I prefer things that are, like, fun and uplifting and might have, like, some drama aspects, but also have, like, a happy ending all in the same 60 minutes or same 30
Mhm,
minutes or whatever it is.
mhm.
I'm do complete nerd things all the time. Total Star Trekky person, 100%. Love how the beginning, middle, and end all in 30 minutes. It makes me so happy.
I wish you were a fly on the wall to see the conversation sometimes with me and Cassandra where things just fly over my head because I have no idea what she's talking about. And I mean, we knew that we were going to work together in somehow, some way, did not know it was a podcast, but she is the yin to my yang. When I ground her and she lifts me up and we are that for each other. And that dynamic is gonna show. We are different, but we always end up coming to very similar conclusions. We have similar values and she definitely brings the fun. Don't get me wrong though, when we were in school, I couldn't watch any of that.
Yeah,
I would rate the show by how many laughing out loud moments I would have. If
because
I
I'm
did
sure a lot
not,
of fun.
like, literally laugh out loud, I can't watch it. And you put me onto Schitt's Creek, actually.
You are welcome.
Yes, thank you for
Life-changing.
that. That perfect example of that. It took me a few episodes to get into it, but once I did, I was in.
Well, it's weird. I think part of the problem I have with, like, dramas is, like, again, that ambiguous loss piece. It's gonna sound wild, but, like, the grief that I have from when, like, a show comes to an end, there's one show in particular, I
Mm,
will not watch the entirety of the last episode because I get so emotionally attached to the characters that now that I know that it's over. I was talking to someone the other day that were telling me they had the same thing with, like, when Things came to an end. They're like, "It was 10 years of my life, and now it's over." There's this ambiguous loss that goes along with that, which is a little bit different than, like, the disenfranchised grief that you and I were talking about earlier, where
mm,
society doesn't allow you to, like, have this grief out loud.
mhm,
When I play a game with some of my younger clients, and the question always is, like, "What was your saddest moment?" And I talk about my dog that we had to have put to sleep, but, like,
mm.
people that have animals, like, understand that, but not everyone does. But that was a heartbreaking moment for me, and so it's really good to acknowledge that even those things, whether it's traditional grief that, you would go to a funeral for or something that other people wouldn't consider to be such a big deal, it's really important to acknowledge all of that because it all falls under the same spectrum.
Absolutely. That's a perfect segue for us to start talking about these different types of grief. Everything that you said, Cassandra, I absolutely love, especially that you feel sad when a show ends,
Yep.
that you know that these are not real people, but that their story impacted you. And I'm sure you probably don't share that with everybody because these types of loss, we feel like they're dumb, stupid, small. Like, I'm gonna sound like an idiot if I say this. What are people gonna think about me if I say that? Especially, and we compare our losses, right? It's
Mhm.
just like, well, you're going through something much harder, and I'm here sad about a show. Yeah, you're sad about a show.
So be sad about that show.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is our mission, to validate the experience that people often minimize. In a
Yep.
world where we live with so much secondhand trauma, we need to know that the world is always going to be massive, and there's going to be massive loss. And these losses are just as important.
Mhm.
Right. So let's start with the first one, ambiguous loss, which you mentioned a few times already today, is loss without closure. It's missing a person from your life that's alive, but they're not there.
Yeah.
A loved one with dementia. What are some that you think of when you think ambiguous loss?
I think about the friends that I don't see anymore.
Mm,
I always talk to my kids about how wherever I go in my life, I pick up like 1 to 2 best friends. Like, and I've gone to a lot of different places. I've done a lot of different things. I'm sure we'll get into some of that later on. Despite the fact that I've had a couple of careers, I really enjoy longevity in a place, but I also enjoy trying new things. So in each phase of my life, I've picked up at least 2 best friends that I just don't necessarily
mhm,
speak to often. They're still on that list. They're still in the best friend hierarchy. We'll text every now
mhm,
and then. I follow them on Facebook, but picking up the phone and actually reaching out, I forget to do that. But when I think about them, I remember to miss them. And,
mhm,
like, that always, like that gets me when I remember to miss someone.
mhm.
But that loss and that grief is always, like, right there on my shoulder.
Absolutely. And when you actually do see them, if you see them once a year, or if you're lucky enough to see them once a year, that hits you hard. You notice really in a big way how
Oh,
much
yeah.
that hurts. And also when we're talking about friendships and loss, sometimes a friend stops calling you.
Yep.
Sometimes people stop talking to you and you don't know why, or you text and you don't hear back. Sometimes we offend people and we don't know it. I
Mhm.
don't know. There's so many, it's so nuanced, but it's the loss that leaves you feeling confused. Yeah.
Yeah. Kinda like
So
I was telling you earlier when I just, went home to visit family for New Year's. The first time
yes.
I'd been there since 2008, just, like, kind of falling back into a little bit of the role that I had when I used to live there was a little bit confusing for me, but also I had this whole FOMO thing, like, the fear of missing
Oof,
out. When I
yeah.
came home, like, their lives go on, and they go on without me. So they're
Mm,
grief there, especially since, like, my life also continues without them.
there's definitely that grief of exactly what we were just saying, that you don't know how much you missed them until you're
Mhm.
there. And it's like picking a scab.
Yep.
right? Yeah, man. We're not gonna end the episodes with in a sad way. I'm gonna let you know in a few minutes how we're gonna end the show because these things could be a downer, but we are gonna always bring humor and a good note. The next one is disenfranchised grief. Grief society doesn't allow you to have, like
Mm-hmm.
a breakup, maybe the death of your ex-husband. Why are you grieving him? He's your ex. He was a bad man, or
Yeah.
she was a bad woman. The loss of a pet, leaving a career, even if you wanna leave.
Yeah, and there's even like you touched on it a little bit about like the grief of like a breakup, but it's a breakup that like people aren't allowed to know about. Like I've known people that
Mm,
have had affairs and they have to grieve the loss of that relationship or else there's not
mhm,
actual closure.
correct.
And that's something that society definitely doesn't want you to talk about. So there's a lot of different aspects of that
Mhm,
we don't really think of that come into acknowledgement when we finally allow ourselves to realize that no, that was a feeling, that was a situation, that's something that I need to be able to let go of. So I have to be able to grieve it.
right, so as you see, a breakup can be in the category of ambiguous loss because of its specificity of what's going on, and it could also be in disenfranchised. That's a really great example of
Hmm.
how it depends what the loss is like, what are the circumstances. Also, even miscarriages as well, or
Oh, yeah.
infertility.
The
Those
loss of
are
something that you never had.
exactly. I mean, could go back to ambiguous loss. You never had the father you always wanted, right?
Hmm.
He's still alive. So again, you can see how these are going to seemingly be repeated, but in a completely different way. Next is anticipatory grief, grieving someone before or grieving something before it's gone, like a terminal diagnosis. Your child, your baby going away to college.
Or even you leaving a job or leaving a career or leaving a location, moving to Florida. There was a lot of grief for me there because I realized just how much I was
Mhm.
going to be missing out on. There's the idea, like, I remember sitting with my grandfather while he was dying. I knew it was coming and it was coming rapidly, but I was sitting there grieving the fact that he was already gone, even though he was still there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that was an interesting time.
Yeah, I know. And then there is delayed grief, and that's when things pile up that finally months later it hits you. Sometimes we can't afford to grieve if you have kids that you're responsible for, if you have things that you have to hold yourself together for to get through. Sometimes it's part of your grieving when you're just denying it and you're afraid of it. You're afraid
Mhm.
that it's going to knock you down and you won't be able to get back up.
I like to tell people I ain't got time for that. They're like, "Well, how about blah, blah, blah?" I'm like, "I ain't got time for that. I've gotta get
Mhm.
through X, Y, and Z. I've gotta get the kids to school. I gotta get this. I've gotta do that. I've gotta go, 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 go." But that grief will catch you. It always does.
It always
Always.
does. Yeah,
It
we
might
can
even be years later, not even just months later. It could be years later. And finally, like, you feel like, "Why does this hurt?" And it's because your grief button got pushed.
absolutely. And lastly is complicated grief. When the pain remains so intense, it's hard to function in daily life. And as mental health counselors, that is when we get to meet you. When what Cassandra was saying, it's been delayed, it's been pushed off, and now you're stricken by it.
And I think the point that you made earlier was really important about how, like, sometimes we'll compare our grief to other people's. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it hurts. But you know what? It's not as bad as what Susie's going through. It's not as bad as what Diana's going through. So I should be able to manage it. And so the shame that comes along with complicated grief is a really, really intricate part because we always feel like we should be able to do more. So reaching out for help isn't always the first thing that comes to mind.
Absolutely. Usually isn't. So that is it in a nutshell. There are other types of grief. I'm not saying that this is all encompassing, but just for the purposes of the podcast, we may introduce a different type depending on our guest or what we're going through or what we learn about. We will bring those in. And we will end with the living loss lesson. It could be a
Mhm.
tangible action, reflection, and what we learned from it. It's not toxic positivity. It's not denying the pain. We are creating or finding meaning behind what happened.
Because there's always something going on that we don't necessarily acknowledge in the moment. Once a little bit of time has passed, I can look back and tell you, yes, this is what I got from that. Yes, this is why I feel like that happened. By time, I could mean years, decades. It could take a very long time for that lesson to come to surface. But it's really important to take a moment and actually look at what you got from it. Whether that was a positive lesson, it could be even a negative one, but it's something that came from it
Mhm.
that you carry with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So for today, I hope that as we were going through all of these different types of non-death grief, that you related to them. And it's not to say, I hope you suffered, and you know, it's just saying that I hope that you feel seen. I hope that you know that you're one, not the only one. And that's why we want to grow this into a community because you're not the only one. And we want you to see that. Acknowledge one thing today that you're grieving that is not death.
And you know what? If you want to share that with us, it could be a topic of one of our shows. So you could go to our Instagram account, which is at the Living Lost Podcast, and share that with us. You can, if we're on YouTube, I think this is going on YouTube, you can comment down
Eventually.
below. Eventually, we'll get there. Like comment or send us a message or just reach out because this is really community based. We really want this to feel like a community and where we can actually discuss these things without the shame, without the fear, without the looming judgment.
Absolutely. And yeah, Cassandra, just lead us off from this episode with a little disclaimer so we know.
Oh, I love the disclaimer because it's going to cover our hind ends. As a reminder, this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Even though we are therapists, but this does not replace professional mental health care. It's really important that if you need to speak to someone, you reach out and speak to someone. And if you need help finding someone, we can help you look for people in your area.
Absolutely. And again, we want to grow this community with you. So if you find value in the conversation, please subscribe. It's going to help us reach more people that need to hear that their grief is valid.
Yes,
Bye. See you in the next one.